Wife suddenly went to a baseball game with her own cousin, so I decided to go through her phone. My face is pale to this day after I saw details about the outstanding experience they had. All right, it's a long one, so bear with me. This situation happened about 2 weeks ago, and I've gone from fully trusting her to deeply doubting her. My wife and I met when I was 19, and we fell in love quite quickly. She had a 4-month-old child from a previous relationship. That father hasn't been in the picture since I've known her. Ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be a father. But I have a genetic disorder I don't wish to pass on, so adoption was just great with me. Anyhow, we've been just like your normal family every day since then. We got married last year. She was never super close with her family, but she did have a pair of cousins she was always kind of close to, and I had lots of fun getting to know them, and they seem like decent people. She did mention that one of them, Max, we'll call him, had, when they were like 12 and 13, tried to kiss her, but she ran off. I asked her if she ever told anyone, and she said she chalked it up to him being a stupid kid. We see him on Christmas every year, and he seems like a normal dude. I actually liked him, as her family is a bunch of stuffed shirts and he's down to earth. Recently, they've reconnected and gone to a few family functions. We own one car, and since I needed it for work, he picked her up and drove her to these things. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary about this. They are cousins, after all. Her behavior really didn't make any obvious changes. However, randomly, as I was watching TV one night, she came in and mentioned that I had friended a girl from my place of work. I accepted a friend request. We're a pretty open couple, and things don't usually offend us. For instance, she'll remark on an attractive guy and make some sort of lewd remark, and I think nothing of telling her this woman was the new Office. She didn't accuse me of cheating, but it felt like she was about to, which has never happened before. The reason I mention this is because I've read cheater accused their partner as a projection or something. Anyway, these family outings were legit. The whole family posts pics on them on Facebook, and the wife sends pics from the outings. There were 2 of these events, and each time wife came home and was like a robot. Zex seemed normal, if not quieter than usual, but as she suffers from depression, she often gets cold every so often, and when I asked her if she was doing all right, she chalked it up to that. Well, 2 weeks ago, she leaves for work, and as it was my day off, I puttered around the house, dropped the boy off at school, and came home to check my email. On Facebook, I saw that I had a message from her cousin. He and I had recently discussed going out to see a farm team baseball game, and I thought he was getting back to me. The message reads, "I'd like to see you on your knees." I was confused as hell until I realized that my wife was still signed in and it was her he was talking to. I wanted to end him. I instantly rushed and read through their chat log, and it's filled with him creeping on her, and while she is saying things like, "But I'm married," and "No, I'm married," these read like very thin no's, like she is saying no because she has to, not because she wants to. I'm disgusted and absolutely floored about it. But since none of them mention anything happening yet, and she is denying him, albeit kindly, I can't exactly say she's cheating. Well, when she gets home and our son is put to bed, I confront her over the situation. She instantly breaks down into hysterics and tears, saying things like, "I didn't do anything, I didn't know how to tell you, I was just hoping he stopped." Now she and I both suffered childhood sexual misuse from family friends. We've both went to years of therapy for it, and for that reason we have very good communication skills when it comes to comfort and boundaries and how to express ourselves about unwanted advances. I love her, and I wanted to believe her, and that he was just being a creep, but the way she didn't tell me and acted seemingly normal leads me to believe something else was going on. I told her that I believed her and asked her if I could message him to tell him to back off and how disgusted I am that they are cousins, or if she would prefer to tell him and handle it herself. She first expressed that she would tell him that I knew and not to call her, but her resolve cracked as she was confident this would just stop. I was furious about that but didn't express it, and told her that knowing she wasn't going to, I was going to give him a peace of mind. This is my wife. If she's being harassed, I will end it, and if she's not being harassed, she's cheating on me, so I messaged him. He saw it but made no reply. The wife says I should have let her handle the situation, and I told her there was no way I was going to keep quiet in the face of this. She seemed to understand, and expressed in the end that I was probably right to confront him because she didn't know how. All seemed to return to normal, but 3 days later, I come home and she's crying. I asked her what's wrong, and she said, "It's Max. You should have let me handle it. I messaged him yesterday and he won't talk to me." We had the conversation again about me not sitting idly by when somebody is harassing my wife. She gave me a look. It wasn't much and it was only for a second, but it gave me the impression that she didn't consider it harassment. We end the discussion in agreement that I handled it how any man would handle it. 2 days later, I'm coming to bed late, like 2 a.m. as I was finishing up some work. I hear her on the phone with somebody kind of chuckling. This is not normal. Told me it was her mom and had something to do with our kid's birthday, which I didn't buy, but at this point I've begun playing stupid so I can observe the situation from a place where she feels comfortable. The next day she's crying again, and at this point I've really had it. She's been unstable for 2 weeks now. When I ask her if this is about Max again, she says she tried to call and apologize for not handling the situation herself, and that he still isn't talking to her. I admit it, I snapped. I told her that either he was misusing her or she was cheating on me, and I caught them. Won the couch tonight, obviously. I wanted to believe her, but I'm not a moron. I'm essentially laying here with my finger on the button waiting for some solid truth, because if this is what it's feeling more and more like, I'm about to go 95,000 megaton nuclear on the both of them. Sorry for the length, I just don't know what I can do from here on out. Edit. She goes to work in 6 hours. I will apologize for my outburst and ask her to sit down with me and talk tonight. It's Sunday and our son typically stays the night with my parents every other Sunday. I'm not proud of it, but I feel it's in my best interest to do a snooping. If I find nothing, we will discuss what happened when it started, what I can do to help her, and what we ought to do moving forward. I love her, and the idea that she is being harassed by somebody who is supposed to love her breaks my heart. However, if I do find something sordid or learn that she was complicit in any way, I am done with the relationship that instance. I don't believe in marriage counseling in instances of infidelity, and even if I did incest, there is no way I could look at her the same again. Will update. Update. So I didn't sleep at all last night, and when she woke up, I made breakfast. I told her I shouldn't have blown up and that we should probably sit down tonight and talk about things. She agreed like she wasn't even upset to begin with, and said she knew she had probably been acting badly. I told her that the sort of harassment she was dealing with was infinitely more difficult because he is a member of the family. She just seemed to agree with me. I wasn't going to snoop, but so many people on here told me I ought to, and not wanting to be accused of not taking the advice I asked for, I decided to go through with and check her emails. With the way she was acting this morning, I had fewer reasons to be suspicious. But at this point, what the heck? And did just that. The level of disgust, hatred, and anger I feel cannot be expressed right, and there will be a divorce. There was one email entitled Yummy, and upon opening it, I found a picture of her cousin with semen on his face. The back and forths are him describing to her his encounters with random not straight men. They make reference to past sexual encounters they've had together, complete with one picture of a female-to-male toy captioned, "I still have our old friend." Then I read some absolutely disgusting filth talk between them, where she is behaving in a very dominating way and insulting his Johnson size. Looking at the dates, I realized that this was from a year ago. As I continue to read, I'm able to figure out, at least from how it reads, that they used to hook up frequently, but stopped after we got married. We were together for several years before we got married. Later, she starts using the "I'm married" excuse, but it's reading like that's just a kink of his, to be told he can't touch her anymore, which he probably does. I'm raising her fucking kid and she does this to me. I've wasted the last 6 years changing my work schedule and not taking better paying jobs because I need hours where I'm able to watch him. I went outside and sat on the front porch, called my brother over, and after explaining to him the entire situation, asked him to take my gun from me for the time being. I'm not a bad person. I never have been. But in the state I'm in now, I'm fluctuating between wanting to end him and wanting to end myself. I'm not going to, but I feel like I'm headed for a breakdown, and I can't trust I'll behave rationally. After this, I'm packing up my clothes and checking into a hotel. These conversations have all been printed, I've sent copies to myself, and when I have time, I'm digging for more dirt. Bought a pack of cigarettes, stopped smoking 4 years ago, And joy, I have to make an appointment at some STD clinic because according to these vile back and forths, a part of his thing is having unprotected sex with these men. My soon-to-be ex-wife has a device, and as such I've never once in all these years worn protection with her. So now I apparently have months of biting my nails to look forward to, as I understand AIDS tests take months. I know his work schedule roughly because I used to work for the same company he does, so maybe before checking in and composing myself, I'm just going to drive down to see his wife evidence in hand. There's no fixing this, there's no therapy, no hope, nothing positive, and I don't care to even entertain an apology. I'm divorcing the whore, and she will get nothing. I hate life right now. I don't feel depressed or sad. I haven't cried. I just have this hot ball of rage in my chest that the cigarettes only briefly cool. I can't be near her or him. I know I said I'm not like that. But man, I really want to beat the piss out of both of them. Update. A year ago, today was the day I made the most life-changing discovery I'd ever made in my life. But I didn't know it at the time. I had just sat down to check Facebook, saw I had a message, and realized after I clicked it that it was my then-wife's account that was active. Inside, there were messages of a sexual nature from her cousin, Max. That got the ball rolling, and within 3 weeks of this message, Max's then-wife, Sherry, and I collected evidence of their affair, stretching back to the days of MySpace. And through the trauma, she and I began supporting each other, and then dating. A year later, she is the mother of my firstborn child. This affair has changed the lives of so many people involved and surrounding it. Max, my ex's cousin and AP, ingested a lethal amount of antifreeze. Though it is highly probable that this was a suicide, we were told by the doctors that treated him that he had ingested just enough to end himself, sort of suggesting that he was trying to self-harm as a cry for help. Sherry had been living on a property owned by Max's parents, and they had taken her side when the affair was made public, but took back their support when he passed away. Fearing they'd evict her or worse, she and her daughter moved into my apartment. Max's passaway also saw my ex openly hated and despised by her family for her role in the affair. They'd been blaming him for it and acting as though Max was a predator that had been molesting her or misusing her, until he passed away and then the blame got shifted to her. She's no longer welcome at family gatherings, and the only people she speaks to is her own parents. And I think the only reason they haven't disowned her is because of my former stepson. My ex-wife had been letting me continue to see my stepson after we split. My relationship with Sherry was outed around the time of Max's pass away, and this ultimately led to her fighting me over it. It still baffles my mind that even after I caught her in 10-year-long affair, she had the audacity to act as though me seeing another woman was some sort of a crime worth taking away the son I had raised since he was only a few months old. Ultimately, though, I decided on my own to walk away from the entire situation, as I felt like our constant fighting and my lack of legal authority over him would lead him to be even more unhappy and traumatized than if I just left. Those of you following me or reading the comments of other posts will know that Sherry and I have relocated to her home state where I've started a new job and we're currently renting a home. We are also both in therapy, individual, and we're being counseled together. We both understand that a lot can go wrong with relationships that formed the way ours did, and we both want to work on communication and growing with one another so we can better navigate the tough times when they come. We're both survivors of infidelity. The story of how we fell in love can never be a cute story to tell the kids. One thing I learned about my marriage through therapy is just how much my own parents' terrible marriage has affected me. My dad is a good guy, a loving father, and my mother is a wonderful woman, but their relationship is a mess. My ex-wife and I never really fought or got into huge fights. Now, kid living in a home with a loveless marriage, I always knew when things were bad. The loud arguments and the yelling and what have you. When things were quiet, things were good. It wasn't happy, it wasn't healthy, but it wasn't outright conflict, so I associated it with good and healthy. My ex-wife in all likelihood never loved me, and I've come to realize that just because we didn't fight and there was no outward conflicts, this by no means meant things were happy. It's just my only point of reference for goodness in a marriage was quiet, and I had quiet. I'll speak for Sherry a little as she's given me that permission to share. but she had been made to feel completely dependent upon Max for everything. They met online, and he convinced her to move in with him even if doing so meant she'd be dropping out of school. He also wanted to be one of those man-of-the-house types, so he didn't allow her to work. No work, no school. Pretty much meant no friends outside of Max and my ex's family. Even worse, a year into it, he revealed to her that he was a bisexual, and informed her he'd see men every so often, and not knowing how to handle it, just accepted that situation. She is now working on a means to get her GED so she can find a job should she choose to. I'm more than happy to provide for the mother of my child, but after not having a say in her own life for so long, she needs to be free to decide what she wants to do with it. Last I heard about my ex is that she got into an altercation at a parking meter with a traffic cop or meter maid, and the incident led to her arrest and discovery a whole host of prescription medication. At first I was told that she stole it from someone, but it turns out she's been doctor shopping. She ended up doing some token 3 weeks of jail time, and her parents are currently fighting to have custody of my stepson. Life got difficult for her real quick. I could write all day about this, but I'm going to end it here and answer questions if anybody wants to get more specific. But I think that just about does it. Thank you for all the support, everyone. You internet folks really helped talk me through all this.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. "I will do my best." Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. "Did you not hear what I said?" "I'm sorry." I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons. leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, "I'm moving to the sales department soon." If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. "Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it." On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. "Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived." I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. "They look good." "What are you talking about?" "These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one?" As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. "Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay?" I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. "Yes, I'm inviting my father." "That's great. I might invite my parents too." I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.